90% of the people who will turn up either in your office or on Zoom, 90% of them, the structure of their problem is going to be exactly the same. All those things are going to boil down to one specific equation in most cases. And that is really simply this. When X client feels Y. It's a simple equation. Every single problem that was going to come into your practice is going to be some variation of this. And if you understand that, then you don't need to keep thinking, oh, I've never worked with this particular condition. The X is always going to be there. We can't change the X. So what we need to do is to change this bit. So all we need to do is for X to trigger, not Y. So the key to therapy really is to elicit a strong enough Y that's going to collapse that. That's really all it is. We've got to elicit a strong enough Y that's going to collapse that, attach it to that trigger, is that we need to define the problem. This is really important. We need to define the problem. Because so many times clients will come in and they will have a label. And if you take the label at face value, you are in for a rough ride. So if the client comes in and says, I have anxiety, if you take that at face value, that they have anxiety, or that I'm an anxious person, and you take that at face value, that implies that anxiety is a through time problem, that they're having it all the time in all contexts. And for some people, they will hear that and think, okay, oh, I've got a client who's anxious then. Right, where's my anxiety scripts? Or where's my anxiety technique? And they think they're going to be able to solve that problem with just a few techniques or scripts. But when it's that big, when it's this big amorphous thing like anxiety or depression, it's really difficult to solve. So what we need to do is to define it. You use questions from the meta model. The meta model is, to my way of thinking, is one of the most important things you can learn. If you can learn to use questions to elicit key information, and you've got very good sensory acuity, then you are 90% there as being a really good therapist. Because those two things of asking the right questions to define the problem and having the sensory acuity to know what it is that you're getting is really key. And that's what's called the meta pattern of NLP. And the first step is associating the client to the problem. When a person accesses a memory, when they actually associate to it, even briefly, what happens is that memory pops up into your mind and protein synthesis starts to occur. At that particular point in time, the memory becomes malleable. If, when the memory pops up, protein synthesis starts to occur, if we can interrupt that protein synthesis and do something that's totally different to what is expected, in other words, a prediction error, then the memory has to recalibrate. Listen to the verb tenses. When I ran through it the first time, I said, I was round my parents' house. My dad was talking to me and I felt bad. That's not associated. Yeah. So you need to get them, okay, so where are you? So you're in your parents' house. What happens next? What happens next? What happens next? And then what happens is you get them to associate. We dissociate them from immediately at that point, which is the second step of the meta pattern of NLP, is to dissociate them from the problem. Because their brain, remember, these memories are there to protect us. And in the past, whenever they thought of this negative thought, there's been a prediction that it will make them feel bad. So we dissociate them from them. And then we need to know what it is they want. So, okay, that's how you've been. How do you want to be that's different? Now, one of the things I will do is to gesture up with my hand. If I've noticed what their eye movements are, according to the NLP eye chart, I will force them into visual construct. But the reality is there's only two techniques. There's anchoring or reframing. That's it. That's all there is. There is nothing else. So every technique, if you analyze it, they're just either anchoring or reframing or a combination.